Quiet on the set. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. I'm Dear Myrtle's very distant cousin, Sadie. She affectionately calls me Sweet Sadie because, of course, you know Dear Myrtle's the most beautiful, kind, and wonderful person on the face of the earth. And she even gave me one of the sugar cookies that was really intended for Andrew, but I digress. Welcome to Wacky Wednesday, where the archive lady, Melissa Barker, has once again joined us, and we're going to be actually, we have a PowerPoint, but Melissa, thank you for being with us tonight. What are we going to talk about?
Tonight, we're going to talk about documenting and preserving diaries, journals, and autograph books.
Oh, I can remember having one in 6th grade, and we folded down every other page so you knew which one to do. But before we dig into that, let me just give you something that Dear Myrtle pointed me to as she was on her way out the door for dinner date with Mr. Myrt. She had just received this notice. Cousin Russ, did you get this notice from Ancestry.com as well?
I did.
You're on their PR list too. Matthew from Ancestry.com, who communicates with all those folks that do mainstream blogging, they're going to limit the changes made to their website, including content maybe not going up every day like we're accustomed to seeing. And that is because during the month of mid-November through early January, they have extremely high volume. How many kits did they sell on Cyber Monday or over the weekend for DNA?
It was a record. I forget the number is bigger than my brain will handle.
Yeah, I think it was something like 1.7 million kits, which is just incredible. So folks, just hang loose. Don't worry. Ancestry's not going anywhere. Just something happening in their life. They got a pretty heavy call volume.
All right. We might want to just mention that also on December 13th, Ancestry Family Search will have a new feature where you must log in to see their records.
Okay. Sounds perfect. Thank you. All right. So, Melissa, back to you. Let's go to your PowerPoint and see there's your title page. And I want to mention to folks that you are moving. When are you moving? Not you, but your office is moving.
We hope it probably won't be until after the first of the year.
Okay, so what happened? What happened in your county? Right now you're in the basement of the courthouse?
Yes, where they put all archives usually is in the basement somewhere. But I'm in the basement. The Houston County, Tennessee Archives is in the basement of the courthouse in Erin, Tennessee. And we are out of room, actually. Talked with the county commission, and we will be moving, we hope, after the first of the year, to the old county jail.
Okay, I want a picture of you behind bars. That's going to be a great shot.
The jail was built. I haven't done the research yet because we may be looking to get it on the National Register of Historic Places. So I've got to do some research on it. We think it was built about the 1940s or 50s, early 50s if it was in the 50s. And it has the jails still intact.
Well, so what are you going to do? Lock me in the jail with your records. I'd be happy overnight to do that.
Right. It actually, when you look at the building, it looks like a house. Because the major part of the building that doesn't include the cells is broken up into rooms, just like a house. It's got a kitchen. It's, and then you have the jail cells, and then there's a basement area, which we already have. The archives already uses the basement area for record storage.
Oh, so you already have why there. Yeah.
Yes, and that's why this building is actually optimal, because this way we'll get all of the records under one roof.
So I imagine in January your weather's horrible, and you're going to have challenges protecting those Hollinger boxes and everything. There must be an interesting procedure for moving. And you got shelf after shelf, rack after rack of stuff. That is going to be a major undertaking. So I don't know if you'll even get to visit with us in January, your moving day, but we'll work with you, whatever we can, because we love having you visit with us.
Well, I love being here, and Betty Lou's asking if the jail is going to be bigger. It's going to be a lot bigger because I only have one office. It's just like if you ever worked in an office, it's about as big as that in the courthouse. And so, and we also have the records vault, which is down the hall, which isn't very big either.
Yeah.
And since we became an archive 7 years ago, you have to remember we were a county in 1871. None of our records had ever been archived. Now, some of them had been microfilmed in the 1970s. The Tennessee State Library and Archives did a huge project to archive the county's records.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some on microfilm. But as far as that goes, there's nothing else that's been archived. And then we have the county offices that has never had a place to transfer their records until now.
Oh, okay. So
so it's been a steady stream of records. Yes.
Yeah. So
in fact, I'm working with the Board of Education right now.
Mm-hmm.
They've never gone through their records to get rid of whatever they could, which isn't anything historical or genealogical, or transfer to the archives, older records. So I'm working with them now.
Aren't you the first county archivist in that county?
Yes, I am.
So, yeah, so you're really at the ground level building this up and getting all the ducks in a row and everything. It's very exciting news. Well, it's good to hear what you're doing. Very good. All right. Shall I go to the next slide and we'll talk about diaries and journals and autograph books?
Yes, we're going to talk about documenting and preserving them, but first I'm going to do the second one first. We're going to talk about preserving them.
Okay.
This is just an example of a couple of what diaries look like. You journal or a diary for several years now. Mine don't look like these. I just use regular lined notebooks, but this is kind of what maybe your ancestors' diaries looked like.
Yeah, my stepmother had one that was a daily reminder, and there was just one page for each day, and she'd write things like kids' birthdays, grandchildren's birthdays, and then if she had a doctor's appointment or little things so that I even saw one page where she kind of planned the menu for a party or something. And yeah, but it wasn't like a Dear Diary. I have to let you know that I'm romantically involved, unrequited love and all that, but I digress. All right, let's go.
Yeah, my grandmother had a diary like what you're talking about. Just, she'd put the one-liners in there. And after she passed and I got all of her papers, I found this it was like a date book. And so I got to looking through it, and I actually found on my birthday the day she wrote when I was born.
Oh, that's cool.
So it was so cool. That was really cool to find.
Yes.
What does Russ have?
Okay, let's see what Russ has. Let me pull it up. Birthdays and special dates. Now, whose is that?
Well, it's mine. It was my mother's, and so anytime I want to know whose birthday it is, I took a lot of stuff out of here. There's pictures.
Yes.
There is a
funeral card in loving memory.
Yeah. So it's full of dates and addresses.
That's very cool. So we each have these. Probably members of our viewing audience also have things like that. Let me know. And I will, I'm sure Cousin Russ will bring you up. All right, should we go to the next page? Are you ready for that?
In just a second, I want to point out that larger diary that says Diary and Daily Reminder was recently donated to the archives. Now, it's not going to be what you think, but it is a very special diary. So then we're going to go to the next slide.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Ooh, so this is like the title page. Oh, yeah, I've seen this.
This is actually in the back of the book.
Okay.
Of that book I was telling you about. There's actually 2 of these daily diaries that were donated and actually belong to this Priestley E. Clark of Erin, Tennessee, here in Houston County. And it's from 1935, 1936. But it is his railroad work diary.
Oh.
He worked for the railroad, and he would put in his diary every day where he was and what he did on that day for the railroad.
You know, I know someone who was married to the vice president of the Daily News, and every day he kept a diary of where he went. It was his log of how many miles he went because he'd have to go visit various district offices for distribution. And it saved his tail when somebody accused him of being the one that was stealing these 250 newspapers. Here he was the vice president. Why would he do that? And because he had years worth of this kind of information in his diary, he had a new red book every year. He prevailed because people said, well, you wouldn't have just suddenly made this up. You were definitely in Passaic instead of out on Long Island.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get it. And even his collar size 10 hosiery, glove size 9. Yeah, very cool.
How these were donated to the archives is things that I get it this way all the time. A lady walked in, she had them in her hand, and she said, I bought a box of books at an estate sale. These were in the box, and I didn't want to throw them away. Do you want them?
Good girl. Wasn't that wonderful of her? Oh,
So
wow.
to me, this has got so much information just on this one page. It has his lodges and clubs listed.
Mm-hmm.
And it says his valuable papers are at the first
Trust and
savings.
Uh-huh. Wow.
And so it's and his wife, from case of emergency, Zella Clark is his wife.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
so and I found this information. I found it very interesting. So we can go back to the next slide, and I'll give you an example of the kind of things he would write in his work diary.
Okay.
It's a little bit light because it's in pencil.
All right.
But he would say, like on July 15th, repairing roof, and he's in Danville. Now, Danville is also in Houston County.
Yeah.
And it's at the far end of the county, and he was repairing the roof at a bridge. There was a house at a bridge.
Yeah, the Watchman House Bridge, number 47, repairing the roof in Danville.
Yes.
So this was his saying he wasn't in Passaic, New Jersey, or he was on Long Island. Only it's the Tennessee places. Cool.
And then 2 days later, in July 17th, he's watching the Drawbridge, number 19 in Clarksville. And from Danville to Clarksville, it's about an hour 15 minutes from each other today in a car.
Wow.
So I don't know how long it took him to get there.
Yeah, I don't know either. Wow. Okay, cool.
But the whole diary is like this. So, I mean, wouldn't this be great if it was your ancestor? But wouldn't it be great if you're researching railroads in the area? Because the railroads are no longer here. There's one, the one in Clarksville is still there. The drawbridge is still there. There's no more railroads in Houston County. They've all been pulled up. The last one was pulled up in 1985.
You know, this is what's happened. Our entire place, I've seen this in Kansas, where it was just a web of connected railroads. Some of them were different size, width, or something like that. So you could only run certain type of trains on them versus the bigger trains. But yeah, now those have all gone to the wayside, and some of them have just been, surfaced over. Like they just put a road on top of it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So anyway, I wanted to share this because this was to me a very fascinating type of diary and journal. And so, but all of our ancestors may have left. I don't have, the only one that I have is the one I told you about from my grandmother. No one else in my family that I know of that I have seen or I have received left a diary or a journal. That's why I started years ago to keep one, because I didn't have any.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, let's see what the community's saying, Russ, and then we'll get back to her PowerPoint.
Okay. Betty Lou says, I use just a wall calendar like a day planner and all the doctor's appointments and many special things happening. So she uses that today. And Stephanie says, my great-grandmother had a book titled Bobby the Liberator, and it was actually a blank journal. She used to write poems and stories.
Wow, that would be interesting.
And speaking of railroads, Betty Lou says Lanoke had an old depot, but the railroad has been pulled up.
I think some communities have done that and used the railroad for like a craft place, things like that. I've seen them turned into restaurants up in Logan. That the old. Well, that's interesting that we're blinking. Got every possible variable.
There's a railroad station where I have visited that is now a historical society.
That's a good thing. Oh, we saw one like that. All right, let's see if we can get it back without it blinking. Well, that was nice. Okay. We really wanted to accentuate those 4 entries, I guess. Well, let's go to the next.
There is some examples of some autograph books, and many of you listening may have those autograph books because they were popular in school, especially like on the last day of school. You got all your friends to sign your autograph book, but it's been a popular thing for a long time. And so when we talk about the fan club, friends, associates, and neighbors, many of those could be in these autograph books that your ancestors have.
That's cool. All right, let's see what Terry has to say.
Terry says, I have my great grandfather's autograph book with dates 1878.
Oh, that's just incredible. Just a decade and a half after the close of the Civil War. That's just incredible. Okay. Yeah, I had an autograph book, not unlike this green one, where the metal edges on the outer edges and was the spine, not spiral like the red one. Yeah. I had that in 6th grade, but I don't have it anymore. My mom threw out a box of things that included also my first Barbie doll, the first edition Barbie doll. Anyway, but I digress. Okay.
But I love reading the autograph books because, and I remember from when I was in school, some of the kids just wouldn't sign their name or sign a nice message. They would put like a silly poem or a, something in there that was silly, but it was of the day, and so it's kind of neat to see those things.
Yeah, roses are red, violets are blue. Yeah, that kind of a thing. There could be takeoffs on that. Okay. Do we look at an example?
Yes, I did put an example in here. This is from 1938 for Erin High School here locally, and it's from Nancy Bell, and she says, it's a pleasure to write in your book. Always remember me as a very good friend of yours, and she puts her parentheses, I hope. She says, remember the good times we have had together. Always remember the day before you left for Lawrenceburg. So this is your ancestor, and if you found this in an archive, you would know that they moved or left for Lawrenceburg.
Yeah. Okay.
You're trying to find them.
And you're seeing that they had gone to the Erin High School and all of that sort of thing. I love it. Okay. So are you ready for the next slide? I get to have a sneak peek.
Yes.
I'm excited. Okay. Oh boy, we're talking about preservation.
We're going to talk about how to preserve these wonderful, wonderful books because I know I say this all the time, but these are one of my favorite types of records to process in the archives and to also do research in. The process or the preservation process is actually fairly easy. You only need 2 items. You need to get you a box. And the archival supply stores, and I talk about these all the time, but there's several of them online. And if you're like me and you can never find anything on a catalog online, order the catalog and have it sent to your home. There's a paper, almost all of them will send you a paper catalog. And when you get that paper catalog, it's really like getting the Sears Christmas book.
I love that you mentioned that. All right,
I remember as a kid, getting the Sears Christmas book and sitting down and circling all the stuff I wanted for Christmas.
Yeah, $4,000 later, like our parents could really afford it, right? All right, let me bring up each of these websites that you've given us, and we're going to use this list every month when we visit with you, although December is a short month, so we won't be visiting with you then. So there's Gaylord, And Cousin Russ, didn't you say you were going to order something because they're having a big sale right
They're
now?
having a big sale, and I need to get some of my photograph albums in boxes.
Okay. Here's the Hollinger Metal Edge website. Light Impressions, which is lightimpressionsdirect.com. Brodart, is that how you say this?
Yes, Brodart. They handle mainly libraries, so you'll find a lot of library materials, but they do have some archival materials on their website.
Okay, and then archival methods. And occasionally, I mean, I follow you on Facebook because you find things where the sleeves for photos are on sale, maybe at Amazon, something like that, and you give us the link, and that saves me having to go looking everywhere for stuff. So thank you.
Oh,
Those are
you're
the
welcome.
links, and Cousin Russ has shared what Melinda has given to us, and we'll remind you of that about every month if we're good. Okay, so this is a cool kind of a box. Tell me about it.
This is an adjustable rare book box. We use these in the archives. To me, it's this one and the other one I'm going to show you. They're more simple items to use. As you can see, it's adjustable, so it will fit different sizes. But there's also other boxes on these websites, and if you just measure your books and get the right box, it will work for you. And you can see I don't know if you can see it, but the way you close it is with the little dot that is Velcro, and it just closes.
Yeah.
Suggest, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, but I would suggest that you actually lightly wrap your book with archival tissue paper.
Oh, okay. So there's no abrasion on that beautiful book cover.
Right. And it will keep moisture away because sometimes if you have leather or if you have some other type, especially leather, if it's an old leather, it could mold.
Oh, okay.
And if your book is moving around in the box, you're going to want to use archival tissue paper to kind of crumple up and put around it. So, because you don't want it to move around.
You don't want it to shift when you pull it off the shelf. Yeah.
And Russ, how am I gonna store this on the shelf, Russ?
Lay down flat.
Lay it down flat. That's right.
Okay.
But I have a question for you. I see that there's some dots there on that picture. How are you going to label that once you've folded, put tissue paper down, buffer to buffer it, and you close up the four sides? How are you going to label that?
The way we label it in the archives, because this is the box and your book is covered, it's okay to use a sticky label. Even if it's not archival, it's okay because your book is covered with an archival material. And so you just use your label maker and make you a label and put it on the box.
Yeah, I buy those sheets of labels that I can put in my inkjet printer. I get them different sizes, like address labels or whatever. They use like, what is that, 2 inches by 4 inches at the National Archives. I see that on the edge of their Hollinger boxes. So, okay, good. I didn't know if that was special. Yeah?
No, those are sticky labels that, because the box is already archival, it's okay to put that sticky label on the box.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. All right, and because
one example.
All right, if you're the one positioning this little dot, and you want it to correspond to this flap that comes up, then it's where you put the corresponding part somewhere on that. On that flap. You then can decide how big or how tall, how close it has to get to that book in order to cover it carefully. Yeah, so I see the adjustability.
Yep, and it's great. We use them in the archives.
Okay, now you have a different kind of box. Oh, you wanted to say something, Russ?
Yeah. If I'm laying that down, I would put the dot about where the label is on the edge of that book. Because if I'm going to lay it down, I'm probably going to lay it down so it's let me see your screen again.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
That's okay. I would lay it down just about the way it is, where that label is on the edge of the box, the left-hand side. I would put the sticker right there because chances are I'm going to lay that book on my shelf in that position so that the front edge.
So you mean on this edge that folds up, which is right now in the shadow, and the underneath side is where you're going to put that label, not on top, because we'd never see it.
Right, exactly. Is that
because you'd put other things on top?
I could put more on top, not many, but I could put more on top. But I would want to be able to know where it is
without moving, and want to do minimal moving. Okay, you're making us think, Melissa. Good for you.
And Russ, that is actually where in my archives, that's where I put the labels, because we lay them down, and when we look for things, we want to be able to look at the shelf and see our labels and then get what we need, so we don't have to move as much.
Right.
Because when you go to move things, you still have a risk of dropping something or damaging something like that. So you don't want to move as much.
Okay. As little movement as possible. We better store them off-site. We've been having little mini earthquakes. That movement we have no control over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Oh.
This is another type of rare book box that you could use. As you can see, it is a fold-over type box. Now, this is a larger book that's being shown. You can get the same box, and like I said, you can take archival tissue paper and stuff around your book. But this is also a good thing.
Yeah, like if it was the correct width, but you had to get one that was an inch longer or wider, then you'd have to put that crumpled up tissue paper. This fits perfectly.
Yes, and this is another good reason to get those paper catalogs. I do not know why, but I have a problem when I'm on these online catalogs, because there's drop-down menus that show you the different measurements. Well, if I'm looking in the catalog, it's just a list on the page, and I can see that much better than I can for some reason on a drop-down menu in a catalog. I can take the catalog to where I'm measuring, and I can look at the sizes and compare and find the one that I need and circle it.
That's closest. Okay. So Yvette has a follow-on question I think we should bring in if you can, Russ.
She says, I've had so many labels lose their stick over time. Do you have, do you ever back up your label with pencil notation right on the folder?
Yes, on folders, on boxes, we do put a pencil notation. That way, if the sticker does come off or for some reason gets lost off the box, yes, then you have that pencil notation that is like your backup.
Yes. And also you can buy labels that are not the repositioning ones. They're permanent labels. So think of that too, Yvette. The usual kind you buy is not the permanent type. I mean, like if you went to Walmart, that kind of thing. Thank you, Yvette. Good question. Okay. So is this an example from your own archive? Or
no, this is actually an example from Gaylord.
Okay. Good supplier. Okay. Good.
We tend to use the previous box that I showed you because it takes up a little less room.
Okay, I can see that.
It takes up a little less room.
All right, so this one would fold up right next to it, whereas the black one has this little lip going all the way around it.
Yes.
So that's another half or a quarter of an inch, something like that. Okay, I get it. Cool.
And again, even though it looks like, when you fold it over, it looks like a nice book you want to display on a shelf, and you want to stand it on its end. Again, you want it to lay down. And the reason that we do that is because if you stand books up on their end, it puts pressure on the spine. And over time, that spine is going to deteriorate. And when you go to get books, even if it's not in a box like this, when you go to get books or 3-ring binders or whatever, when you pull on, it's just an automatic to pull on the spine.
Oh,
and you don't want to do that.
I get that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So next, yes, we're going to talk about archival tissue paper. This last week, actually, I've had 2 different people email me asking me the difference between buffered and unbuffered tissue paper. So this is perfect to add this to our talk tonight. There's 2 kinds of archival tissue paper. One is called buffered and one is called unbuffered. The buffered tissue paper has an alkaline substance in the tissue paper. It's usually like a calcium carbonate, and it is added as an alkaline reserve or a buffer to counteract the acids that form in the materials you're trying to protect.
So why would we ever buy the unbuffered type?
Well, if you go to the next slide, we'll tell you.
There's something about it. Oh, I forgot to look ahead on the next slide thing. Okay.
Yeah. The unbuffered tissue paper, the reason you need to know this is because when you're looking at the catalog online or you're looking in your paper catalog, it's going to give you an option of buffered or unbuffered. And so knowing the difference will help you to decide. This particular type of archival tissue paper is free of that alkaline substance. Now, you're probably going to use buffered tissue paper for the majority of what you're going to use it for.
Mm-hmm.
The reason you would use unbuffered is with dye transfer prints, and I don't know how to pronounce that word, cyanotype photographs.
Cyanotype, because I know cayenne is a color, C-Y-A-N. Cyanotype, I don't know.
But especially with protein-based materials, the things that like come from animals, silk, wool, leather, feathers, or horsehair. Now, think about leather. Many of our old books, diaries, things like that could be made of leather. So you want to use unbuffered tissue paper to wrap those in.
Okay, and this would be like for a uniform, or if you have an old hat, wool hat, felt hat.
You know, we may not use a lot of these types of things today, but our ancestors did. And so we need to pay attention to what these things are made of. It's, for instance, if you have let's say you have a feather boa that your grandmother had that she wore out on fancy dinners. Well, if you want to put it in a box with tissue paper, you're going to want to use unbuffered tissue paper because it has feathers.
Okay, so Cousin Russ, when it's time for you to retire your Cousin Russ hat and get another one, you'll have to store it properly because it's made of plant material, cotton, and you'll have to use the unbuffered. So think of your hat and unbuffered.
Yep.
All right, maybe that'll help us remember the difference. Cool. Cool beans. Okay. All right, so we have quite a bit about how to archive these, the right kind of boxes, tissue paper, which way to set them on the shelf, that means flat. Now we're documenting, so what does that mean?
Well, before we get to documenting, I want to talk about one other thing when it comes to this, and this is something that I did early on when I started journaling that I don't do anymore. Russ showed us his little book that had a picture in it, had a funeral card in it. Many of our ancestors and family members who kept diaries or kept journals or a calendar or whatever it may be may have stuck stuff in it. Now, I'm going to make a confession. Before I was an archivist, I would staple stuff in mine. And so, yes, I got to where that my husband and I would go on a date night or something, and I would pick up just the menu from the restaurant if it was a paper menu or something, or I'd pick up a card from somewhere we were at, and I'd staple it in my journal after I had written about what we had done. So now I'm having to go back and take all of these staples out. And but if there's things in your journal, if they're just stuck in there, or if they're stapled, if they're using like metal paper clips, you'll want to remove the metal. Don't take the things out. You want to leave them where they are. And what you can do, I didn't put a slide for this, but you can purchase archival envelopes, or you can use L sleeves.
Yes.
And you can put those items in the L sleeves or the envelopes. Maybe there's newspaper clippings. How many of us have seen a newspaper clipping in a Bible or a diary that has aged to where that orangey yellow stain is on the page?
On the page next to it, because in the diary. And it's the exact shape of the newspaper clipping. I got it. Yeah.
Yes. In fact, I was working today on a set of records. A local lady donated all of the Houston County Retired Teacher Association records to the archives. And there are a lot of newspaper clippings, and they've all aged and yellowed. And the papers that they were laying up against now have that orangey clipping, and it does not come out. It's very acidic, and it will not come out of the document.
That's frightening. So we got to be careful with our stuff.
Yes, there's two things you can do. You can, if you want to keep the clipping, if you really, really want to keep the clipping, then put it in an L sleeve, and they come in all different shapes and sizes, or put it in an archival envelope. The other thing you can do, because today we have wonderful printers and copiers.
Yes.
You need to digitize it, obviously, but then make a copy onto acid-free copy paper, and then discard the original.
Okay, because it's going to crumple.
That is okay to do.
Anyway, yeah.
Yes. A lot of our archives are actually doing that because they just don't want to take the risk of it getting next to important documents and staining them.
So, Cousin Russ, in your book, you could get an envelope or sleeve for the photos, things like that are just stuffed in that. But keep them in the same spot where they were, because, I mean, there could be a rhyme or reason behind why it's in that part, not a later or earlier part of the book.
Oh, it's definitely there on a purpose because it's documenting the date that's in there. Many times, this is my mother, so
yeah,
she has a date, and there's a prayer card on that, right in the page.
So that was your mother doing the genealogy of her time using the tools available at her time.
Yep.
Way to go.
And there's strike-throughs and changes, notes, so it's awesome.
I think it is. Way cool. Okay, so we have some ideas there. Cool.
Yes, and that's a very important point, like you just said, Sweet Sadie, to put those items back where they were. Because like Russ said, you know, the journal entry could talk about whatever it is that is there. And if you've taken everything out and put it in another box or put it somewhere else, you're going to lose that original order. Now, original order is something that archivists, it's kind of like the first rule of archiving. You keep things in their original order. Want to do. And these people like Russ's mother, you know, I don't know if she was into genealogy, but if you kept diaries, kept calendars, kept this kind of stuff, they were doing genealogy, then they didn't know it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we are so thankful for that.
We may not know the reason why they're in a specific order right now, but some point in time down the road, now I know why she did that.
Yes, it's like we don't know the relationship or the correlation because we're looking at it for the first time. I get it. All right. So what are we doing on this page?
We're going to talk about documenting the diaries, the journals, the autograph books, or anything that you have that are like this in your home archivist collection of records. And when I say documenting, you're going to do one of a few things or all of these things. And so you can go to the next slide. I think I have a list.
Okay. There you go.
Okay. And I say either do one or all because it might be a daunting task. If you have someone who kept diaries for 30 years, it could be a daunting task. I have a local retired teacher who is actually an author, and she has kept diaries since she was a small child. And she has boxes and boxes of diaries. So this would be a daunting task for her. But I would suggest that you transcribe your ancestors' diary or the autograph book. I would suggest you index it, an every name index.
Okay.
This will help you with your research. How many of us have looked at a document, looked at the witness on the document, looked at the informant on the document, and we know via the fan club that we need to look into these people to see if they're related. You know, why did they interact with your ancestor? You know, and so indexing Diaries, you're going to pull out a lot of people's names, the neighbor, the milkman. You know, maybe they were mad at the milkman that day and they wrote about it in their diary.
Yeah, with disparaging remarks on the side. Yeah, I get it though. Yeah.
You know, and so, but another thing you might want to do is digitize. You know, get it scanned, because what if something happens to it? Get it scanned in some way and get it digitized.
Yeah.
And the last thing, and to me as an archivist, the most important thing is to share it. Either donate the index, donate the digitized pages, maybe the transcriptions. If it's not too personal, some of us have some real personal things in there we don't want to share, but share what you can with local archives, historical societies, genealogical societies, blog about it. Get that information out there, because if you hold it just to yourself, think about all the information in there about other people. And I'm reminded of, do you remember the Who Do You Think You Are episode with Tim McGraw?
Yes, he's my cousin. He really is.
And they told him about his ancestor being mentioned in George Washington's diary.
Yes.
Because he was a neighbor. He was only mentioned once, and it was very brief. But the reason they knew he was mentioned in there, because it was George Washington, of course, and all of George Washington's papers, diaries, everything have been transcribed or digitized and easily searchable.
That's where things like the Draper manuscripts are so valuable, where they just happen to interview somebody that knew somebody in the family. And we're glad that we have those things available. Way cool. Getting at least the index up online, so people could, and you could say, and the original is at the Houston County, Tennessee Archives, where I've donated it.
Right.
And if I were to donate the original to you, would you also like me to donate my transcription and the digitized version?
I would, yes. And that is up to each individual archivist or repository. I always tell people, before you donate anything, please contact them, talk to them about their donation policies, because some places, even though I'm full, I don't refuse anything, but some places do refuse things because they only take certain items, and they only have so much room.
I totally get that. Some places restrict to, okay, we'll take our county and anything east of the Mississippi River or something along that line. I've seen statements like that. Wow. Okay.
Almost all archives have what's called an accession rules or guidelines, and they are set up, and they usually are pretty strict on them about what they will accept. And so always just call and ask ahead of time. That way, if you want to, where you want to give it, they say no, then you'll have time to find another place, you know, maybe before you pass and these things go on to your family. But the main thing is that in your drawers and under your beds and in your closets, get these things out there. I don't know if you want to share this now, but remember we were talking about the New Hampshire vault that they opened?
Yeah, let me bring that up. I'll go find it. What did I do with that link? Why your research is never done. This was a startling thing you noticed and posted about on Facebook. So what happened in New Hampshire? At their state house?
Yes, their state house had a vault. And for some reason, for decades and decades, they never thought to open it. And so it was locked. I don't know if it was locked and nobody knew the combination or what, but they recently got into it. And lo and behold, you can go to this link, and there's actually a short video from the news channel. And when they show you the inside of the vault, you're going to be flabbergasted by how much is in there. And it dates back to the Civil War.
Well, I can't show the video because I don't want to get this channel turned off. Like DearMYRTLE's channel is still there, but I can't add new things until later next week. Yeah, and that's pretty darn cool. So this is why never give up, because stuff like this has come. You'd think they had everything in New Hampshire, cataloged and
Yep.
finding
And see, exactly. And archivists, I know that you can't really discover things if it's already in your archives, but we rediscover things all the time because we have records that are on shelves that we just haven't gotten to yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we
Especially,
get to them,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, especially in your case, you're the new archivist, the only archivist. So stuff had been piling up and you can only get through so much at a time. I've seen other archives, Manatee County, Florida, where they had a clerk that just accepted the piles and said, okay, marriage records are here, but they didn't know the scope of the number of years and things, and that there was that there were books for white and a separate book for colored marriages and things along that line that you would know as an archivist once you'd been able to go through it. So it's a rediscovery of what you've got.
And that's exactly right. Yeah.
All right, Cousin Russ has been flashing some Microsoft Excel. Let's go see what he's doing over there. What have you got, Cousin Russ? You might be muted, dear.
We're talking about inventory.
Yeah.
And what I did, these are photo albums that my mother has, that I have, that I've now taken care of. So each of these are an album with a brief description and the date and the order that they were, the date order. So there's 142 photo albums.
Oh my gosh.
But they were all labeled, and they're labeled, they're in order. I know exactly where they are.
What's the hooker's trip? I want to know about that.
That's they did a backpack trip on horse in 1975, and that was the name of the ranch.
Okay, all right. I just had to tease you.
Yeah, these are all trips that they took. But so I had to do what you told me, Melissa. I had organized it in such a way so I know these two items that are in yellow. That means I got to do something with them. There's some genealogy in them that as I was creating the list, I said I'm going to mark those few that I really want to get back to. So
okay, when you're not doing everything else.
Yeah.
Well, we are having free time toward the end of December. But anyway, very cool. He's really becoming quite the archivist, isn't he, Melissa?
He is doing such a great job. I'm telling you. Listening to everything I say.
I know. Well, that was the last slide in our slideshow. I'm wondering if anyone who's viewing has a specific question they'd like to pose to Melissa. You can see how easily adaptable she is and understands things from a genealogist point of view, not just an archivist point of view. And that's what's so good about you in your role as an archivist in the county, is you understand what researchers might want to look at.
I had a family came into the archives a couple of days ago, and this actually just makes my heart skip a beat. They were from Montana. They have an ancestor, only one ancestor. I think the family just kind of came through this area on a whim or something back in the 1920s, but their grandfather had been born in this county in 1924. So they were looking for anything they could find. They didn't think they'd find anything, but they wanted to come to where he was born and see the area, walk the streets. And I just had so much fun with them because I am a genealogist that became an archivist. I have a motto. I say, I think every genealogist should be an archivist and every archivist should be a genealogist. I think that they just go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Love and marriage, hand in glove, all of that sort of thing. I get it. Mr. Myrt and old Myrt. I think that's cool. Did you find anything, or were you giving them you were giving them the experience of what it was like in your town in 1924?
Yes, and they were looking for deed records. They were looking for school records, and unfortunately, the deed records they could look through. The school records, unfortunately, don't go back that far.
Mm-hmm.
They just weren't saved,
Mm-hmm.
and the only reason why they know he was born here is it on their mother's birth certificate. It's her father. It says born in Erin, Tennessee. Now, I told them, I said, there is another city in Tennessee, Erwin, Erwin.
And yours is ER what?
Erin,
Okay, so is there a W or just the I? Yeah.
just the I. And
Mm-hmm.
Erwin, Tennessee is in Unicoi County in East Tennessee, in the far east. I'm in Middle Tennessee. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I was able to help them and say, okay, well, maybe it was Erwin. So I would always check, but I always give them my email address and I tell them, please, please email me with information, questions, or anything, because for some reason I keep these names in my head, and as I'm working on records, when I run across a name that I know a visitor's been by, and I have them sign a guest book and put their surnames in there. So always
Mm-hmm.
sign the guest book when you go to a facility.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can get back in touch with them. Leave your contact information, because archivists are that way. They get these names in their heads, and as they're working on new records that haven't been processed, they're not
Oh,
online,
yeah.
not on microfilm, they
Mm-hmm.
may remember when you were there or the names you were researching, and they may get back in touch with you.
Yes, as much as we pray we'll make a breakthrough, I think our ancestors want to be found and might give you a little tweak to say, yep, remember that, and you'll look it up. I don't know how you can remember
That's
all
right.
that stuff. All right, we got a question or a comment from the community, and I am looking for your questions so that we can pose them to Melissa here.
Pam says my aunt has albums that has photos of V-Day parade in our town that I want to donate to our archives.
Oh, that will be wonderful. I'm not sure where you live, Pam, but check with your local archives. If they don't want them for whatever reason, check with a local museum, historical society, genealogical society. And if locally you just can't get someone to take them, contact your state archives, because I can tell you, most state archives aren't interested in all family records, but when it comes to military records, they are desperate to document that. And so don't stop at the local level, go to the state level. And also I would check with some of the military archives in your area, if there is one in your state, maybe. I live near a place called Fort Campbell, Kentucky. It's only about 45 minutes from me, but they have a museum and archives on their base. And I know the archivist, and so they do great work there.
Okay, we've got something from Russ, and then we have a follow-on comment from Pam.
Don't forget your local township archives, because I went to buy this book, and inside the book, there's a two-page spread for my family, and I had done like Melissa would want, and as I called ahead and said I'm going to come. They were having an open house, and somebody was there at the open house who was in the same Boy Scout troop that I was. We were off by a couple of years, but I called ahead, let them know. And they had 2 jugs of apple cider that came out of my farm. So,
all right, well, let's see what she has to say.
Comment from Yvette. What's the best way to photograph a diary that is too fragile to lay flat?
I would suggest that you could use one of those handheld scanners. But I still may not suggest that, because if it's that fragile, you may want to, I tell you what, you may take it to your state archives. They have some wonderful equipment that are overhead scanners to lay it flat.
Yes, let me share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is, let me get the right camera. This is the setup that I have that's similar to what you're talking about at a state or county historical society or a research library. They have something bigger than this at the National Archives with 4 bulbs instead of just the 2 that I have. And the camera is mounted right here on this post, and you can put it up or down depending on how big. And this is so fast because you just take a click. And it's the shot is immediately taken, and it's about the price of I think it was like it's under $200. Let's see if they still have it for sale at Amazon. Well, it's up to $219. They have different size ones, but that's the one I got because, and I did pay about $180 for it, I think. Let me give you that link, guys. Cousin Russ will give it. It's called a copy stand. Let me give you this. That's what you were thinking of, wasn't it?
Yes, something similar. I know that here at the Tennessee State Library and Archives, in their reading room, actually, they have an overhead scanner for patrons to use, because this is where and the reading room is where all of like the city directories and family history books and things. And if it has like a close binding, or some of the city directories are falling apart too, you can, instead of going to a copier that a patron can use, next to the copier they actually have one of these overhead scanners, and you can take your book up there and use the overhead scanner like you would a copy machine in the reading room.
And then you're saving those pages from getting torn, or the spine of the book from coming apart. Yeah.
Yes.
Overhead scanner. Let's see if I can get something like that. Oh, they have different kinds here at Amazon. But they're way more money than I'm planning to spend. Yeah, I do have a kind of a document scanner that's similar to this one, just a little bit bigger. I've tried all kinds of things, and I really like the copy stand. If you have the right kind of tripod, you can get an adapter for the tripod to hold your smartphone and take the picture that way. All right, what have you got from the community, Russ?
Stephanie says, I have an album my grandmother made for my father. Under the pictures are hand-typed caption, but the sticky that held it in place is totally gone. How would you preserve the order and captions? Move everything into a new album?
Actually, how we handle albums, and I'm going to guess, and Stephanie, you could tell me, is it one of these, one of those old-fashioned, like from the 1970s, sticky albums that everybody used to use? I'm not sure. I actually was working with one of those today. In my case, though, everything was falling out. Either with those sticky albums, either they stick really well, or everything over time starts falling out because the glue, doesn't hold it very well. What we do is we document each and every page, regardless if you think it's in the right order or not. However you received it, that's your original order. And you're going to take a photograph or scan each page as it is. And then you're going to try to take each item out of each page. You're going to put them in L sleeves or envelopes, and then put them into an archival folder. You're going to label your folder page 1. And you're going to do this with each one, and then those folders you're going to put in an archival Hollinger box. That's how we do it in the archives with those types of sticky albums.
Okay, you mentioned L sleeves. Let me give you this link. This is, and it really does have down the left side and across the bottom that's bound, and the other 2 sides are open. That's what she means by L sleeve. I'll give you the link.
And they're held together how?
Static electricity. When you think about 2 sides being open, you think, well, that's going to fall out of there. It doesn't. When you close down the plastic over your document, as long as there's plastic touching all around the document, as long as the document's not too big for your L sleeve, the static electricity will make it close, and you can hold it and kind of shake it a little bit, and it won't fall out.
I love it. All right, what have we got from the community? Okay, I think it's about our last question.
I do have access to a copy stand, but what about using a sheet of glass to help flatten it?
I would be careful because glass can be heavy, and you could still damage the book. I would also think about the glare. Maybe you might have some glare, but it's something to try. Just be careful, and if you see that the book or something is having too much weight on it, or it looks like it's being stressed, then I would immediately just remove it.
Yeah, at the National Archives they have sort of clear plexiglass, but I don't get very good pictures from that either.
Yeah.
So, okay, one more question. This is it.
Yep, Stephanie's follow-up question. Would you put the caption in the same sleeve as the photo?
Yes, I actually did that today. There was the ones that I was working with had photographs on the page, and then they put little strips of paper with the writing of the caption of the photo separately. And what I did is I took the photo and I put it in an L sleeve. I took the little piece of paper that had the caption on it, and I turned and put it on the back side, on like in the L sleeve, but on the back where the photo is, on the back of the photo where the caption is facing outward, where you could turn it over and read the caption through the L sleeve.
Perfect. Good questions. Wow, what a powerful discussion we've had today. Thank you, Cousin Russ, for bringing in the comments, and thank you, Melissa, for being with us and being so open and sharing. You know, I used to be very nervous speaking with an archive person. Now I am totally comfortable speaking with you. You've made it possible for me. I have my kit now. I finally got a big enough plastic container to keep all my home archival supplies in. The last thing to arrive are those sticky little sponge things for cleaning dirt off of documents that you taught us about last month. So I'm good to go. Now I just need to start working on some of my dad's old documents. And when you said in the 1950s that the home might get on the historic register, I wonder if that means old Myrt can get on the historic register. I was born in the early 50s. Oh no. Anyway, well, Melissa, thank you so much. And we will see you not in December, but we will see you again in January in this same time period. Folks, I asked her in the green room, no pressure, but I said, would you please come hang out with us again next month? And Dear Myrtle's going to be so happy that I can report Melissa said yes. So we'll be learning more from her in 2018. Anything else before we go, Russ, that I may have forgotten?
Our conversation will continue in the link I just posted. So if you have watched this, you want to leave some more comments, leave it in the Dear Myrtle genealogy community, and the link is in the unified chat. And that way we all can see and read your comments.
And if you make your comment in response to this particular post, if it refers to something that Melissa spoke about, then people will be able to click on that link and watch the archive version of the Hangout. It's all good. It's all good. All right. Well, I guess there's nothing left to say, but on behalf of Cousin Russ and Dear Myrtle, who's still out to dinner, those two, I don't think they went dancing. Can you see her dancing in her wheelchair, Cousin Russ? I don't know. Anyway.
Try.
I know. Well, this is Dear Myrtle's cousin, Sadie, sweet old Sadie, as she calls me. Happy family tree climbing, everybody. That's a wrap.